My boyfriend secretly stole the love letters I wrote him and gave them to his fiancée, as if they were his own words. So a year later, my friends and I crashed their lavish engagement party to expose the truth. Then out of nowhere, he had the nerve to show up at my door claiming we were still soulmates. I encountered Leo at a pre-owned bookshop. He possessed a captivating charm, the kind that made you feel like the central figure in a story. He'd recite verses, flash a slightly crooked smile, and declare his admiration for women with an inner spark. He slipped me his number, concealed within a book we both reached for. That evening, he sent a text. Leo dedicated his time to an animal sanctuary, had a fondness for independent films, and curated playlists for me with titles such as For When You Feel Too Much. I shared with him the early loss of my mother, and he remarked, "You handle it gracefully." He made me feel like the most important person on earth. Our connection lasted for intense months. We mutually agreed to no social media presence. He claimed it caused him anxiety. I convinced myself this meant he was unique, genuine, authentic. Then, things began to shift. For his birthday, I gifted him a rare poetry collection. A week later, I spotted it in a tagged social media post by someone else, expressing gratitude for the wonderful present. I dismissed it as a coincidence. Subsequently, matters grew stranger. A poem I had sent him appeared as a caption on a post where he was tagged, but I was not. When I inquired, he dismissed it as overthinking, then sent a voice memo assuring me I was his sanctuary. I rationalized it, believing I was fortunate to have such a distinct, sensitive partner. Yet, a nagging doubt persisted. So, I did what any woman would do. I scrolled. I meticulously examined every tagged post he was in, then performed reverse image searches on each photograph. This led me to a woman named Sophia. Sophia had engagement photos, and there was Leo, beaming devilishly in white linen. The caption read, "Can't wait to marry my soulmate." Initially, I remained passive. I observed. Sophia had shared a handwritten love letter. The phrasing was too familiar. It was a love letter I had penned for him. Then, I saw a quote she posted about Leo, the very same quote he had sent to me the previous week. I created a burner account and messaged her, suggesting, "I think we need to talk." We met at a coffee shop. She arrived wearing a scarf I had knitted for Leo for Christmas. He had told me he lost it. Her lip trembled as she placed her order. We meticulously cross-referenced everything. He had told her his favorite poem was I Carry Your Heart With Me by E. Cummings, my favorite, which I had introduced him to. The favorite playlist he sent me? She had created it and sent it to Leo. His pet name for her? The same as mine. He was constructing his ideal woman, piecing her together from both of us. Sophia whispered, "Let's go nuclear." She proposed we disrupt the engagement party to expose his true character to everyone. I waited in her bedroom until the guests arrived. She clinked her glass, and the room hushed. She announced her intention to read a love letter Leo had supposedly written for her. When she finished, Leo smirked smugly around the room, until she added, "Wait, this says it was written by someone named Laura." Leo's face went ashen. She chuckled and declared, "Let's try another. Laura, would you come over here?" I walked to stand beside her and nearly burst into laughter at Leo's stunned expression. I produced a letter myself and began reading it, concluding by revealing it was actually addressed to Sophia, not me. Sophia then handed Leo a manila folder containing screenshots of poems he had sent to each of us. It also held a copy of his vows for Sophia, which I had drafted for him in the form of a love letter. His composure shattered. His aunt departed. One groomsman uttered, "You're repulsive." Leo vanished, deleting everything. A week later, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was the poetry book we had connected over. My name was inscribed within. A sticky note fluttered out. "Thank you for being my true other half. Want to have lunch?" I chuckled and reached for my phone to text her. We had already exchanged numbers, checking in daily since the party. 2 weeks passed before I heard from Leo again. I was in my apartment on a Saturday morning, browsing job listings, attempting to pretend my life hadn't just imploded, when my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I nearly ignored it, but a strange curiosity compelled me to answer. His voice was different, diminished, as if his confidence had deflated. He asked if we could speak, claiming he was now in therapy, working on himself. I told him there was nothing to discuss. He insisted he had made errors, but he truly loved me, that what we shared was unique, unlike anything with her. I ended the call before he could complete his rehearsed monologue. Sophia texted me 20 minutes later. She had received the same call, likely right after mine. Same script, same pledges of transformation. We decided to meet again at the same coffee shop, our unofficial base for processing this bizarre situation. She looked weary, with dark circles beneath her eyes that concealer couldn't quite conceal. She mentioned Leo had been appearing at her gym at 6 a.m. and her workplace at lunchtime, always with flowers and that infuriating crooked smile that once captivated us both. I told her he had been leaving notes under my windshield wipers, poetry he asserted he wrote for me, but we both knew better now. Everything was borrowed, stolen, rehashed. The harassment gradually intensified. He began sending lengthy emails, rambling about how we failed to comprehend the pressure he was under, how he required both of us to be complete, as if we were puzzle pieces in his personal evolution, how we were being cruel by excluding him when he was striving for growth. Sophia blocked him everywhere. I did too. But he constantly found new avenues, new numbers from burner phones, new email addresses with increasingly desperate usernames, friends of friends relaying messages because he had convinced them he merely needed closure. One evening, Sophia called me, weeping. Her voice was trembling, scared in a way that made me grab my keys before she even explained. Leo had appeared at her sister's house during Sunday family dinner, bringing a guitar and attempting to serenade her from the front lawn with a song he claimed to have composed. Her father, a gentle man who had never raised his voice, had to threaten to contact the police before Leo finally departed. I drove to her place, disregarding several traffic laws en route. We sat on her couch, drinking wine directly from the bottle and comparing notes on his escalating conduct. That's when we realized something unexpected. Without Leo between us, without the constant comparison and rivalry he had engineered, we genuinely liked each other a great deal. We began spending time together more deliberately. Coffee evolved into lunch at the Vietnamese eatery she adored. Lunch became dinner at the Italian restaurant I had been eager to try. She introduced me to her favorite bookstore, a chaotic secondhand shop where the owner's cat napped on the philosophy shelf. I showed her the hiking trails I cherished outside the city, teaching her to identify birds by their calls. We discussed everything except Leo. Our professions. She was a graphic designer who detested her micromanaging boss. I was a teacher considering graduate school. Our families. Her 3 sisters who constantly texted. My father who called every Sunday to check in. Our aspirations. She dreamed of opening a bakery specializing in French pastries. I was saving to travel through Europe with an entire Pinterest board dedicated to places to visit. 3 weeks after the engagement party debacle, Sophia texted me about a book signing. An author we both admired was visiting town, someone whose words we had both quoted in our pilfered letters to Leo. We went together, standing in line for 2 hours, discussing our favorite chapters, the scenes that moved us to tears, the characters we identified with. When we reached the front, the author inquired if we were a couple. Sophia looked at me with those brown eyes that had shed too many tears over an undeserving man. I looked at her, at the way she bit her lip when she was contemplating. We both said yes simultaneously, then laughed at the synchronicity. After that, things subtly but undeniably shifted. Our outings felt different, improved, charged with potential. She started texting me, "Good morning," with a coffee emoji. I'd send her amusing memes during her lunch break, saving the ones I knew would make her snort with laughter. When she had a difficult day at work, I'd arrive with takeout from her favorite Thai place, recalling her order perfectly. When I fell ill with a summer cold, she brought me homemade soup and stayed to watch terrible reality TV, poking fun at the contestants until I felt better. The first time she kissed me, we were at her apartment, preparing dinner. I was chopping vegetables and rambling about my awful assistant principal, who seemed to exist solely to make teachers' lives harder. She simply walked over, placed her hand on my cheek with a tenderness that made me stop mid-sentence, and kissed me. Simple as that. No pretense, no poetry, just truth. When she pulled back, she said she had been wanting to do that for weeks, perhaps since that initial coffee shop meeting. I dropped the knife, letting it clatter on the counter, and kissed her again. We resolved to proceed slowly. Both of us had just emerged from the Leo situation, still unraveling what was genuine from what was performance. Neither of us had dated women before, though in retrospect, there had been indications we had both overlooked. But it felt right, natural, like discovering a part of yourself you didn't know was missing, a conversation you had been waiting your whole life to have. We kept it quiet at first, just between us, our own small world free from external noise or judgment. We deserved something that was entirely ours after having our words and emotions plagiarized. But Leo found out, of course he did. He always had a knack for inserting himself into unwelcome spaces, like a song you can't dislodge from your mind. I was at the grocery store when I first realized he knew. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, just a photo of Sophia and me from the book signing, taken from across the store. We were laughing at something, her hand on my arm. The caption read, "Interesting plot twist." My hands grew cold around the shopping cart handle. The fluorescent light suddenly seemed too bright, the music too loud. I abandoned my groceries in the cereal aisle and immediately called Sophia. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight and breathless. She had received the same photo 5 minutes earlier. We agreed to meet at her place right away. When I arrived, she was pacing her living room like a caged animal, wearing a path in her vintage Turkish rug. We tried to deduce how he had discovered us. We had been so cautious, no social media posts, no public displays beyond normal friendship. Then Sophia recalled her neighbor mentioning seeing her ex around the building a few days prior. She had dismissed it, thinking he meant someone else. Now, the pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. The texts began arriving rapidly after that. Long, rambling messages about betrayal and how we had become gay simply to harm him, how it wasn't natural, wasn't real, was just us bonding over our shared dislike of him. Each message was more deranged than the last, oscillating between pleading and accusatory. I wanted to hurl my phone across the room. Sophia actually did throw hers, then instantly regretted it when the screen cracked, spiderweb patterns marring our reflection. He started appearing in places again. The coffee shop where we had first met to compare notes about his plagiarism, the Vietnamese restaurant where we had our third not date, sharing spring rolls and secrets. Always sitting just far enough away to claim coincidence. Always watching with those eyes that once made me feel special. Now they simply made my skin crawl, like insects marching down my spine. Sophia's sister called one afternoon while we were attempting to watch a movie and forget everything. Leo had contacted her on LinkedIn, of all places, inquiring if she knew her sister was going through something and offering assistance. Her sister told him to get lost in much more colorful language, but it unnerved Sophia. He was broadening his reach, attempting to get to us through the people we cared about. I began checking my car before entering, peering into the back seat like a scene from a horror film, glancing over my shoulder when I walked to work. Sophia installed a doorbell camera after discovering flowers on her doorstep 3 mornings in a row, always sunflowers, which she had once told him were her favorites during a happier time. The cards were unsigned, but we recognized the handwriting. It was disguised, but the sentiment was purely Leo. 2 weeks into this new harassment campaign, things escalated. I was leaving work late, exhausted from parent-teacher conferences and difficult discussions about standardized testing, when I found Leo sitting on my car hood. Just sitting there, as if he owned the place, scrolling through his phone with practiced nonchalance. I froze in the parking lot, keys gripped between my fingers as I had learned in that self-defense class I had taken in college. He looked up and smiled, that crooked smile that used to disarm me. He said he just wanted to talk, to comprehend. His voice held that reasonable tone he used when he was about to utter something completely irrational. I told him to get off my car. He slid down slowly, hands raised as if he were harmless, as if he hadn't been terrorizing us for weeks. He began speaking about how he had been contemplating, how perhaps this could work for all of us, how some individuals have multiple partners, and it's beautiful and natural, how he could date both of us, and we could date each other, and everyone wins. I laughed. I actually laughed in his face, which wasn't wise, but I couldn't help it. The sheer absurdity of it all simply bubbled up and out. I told him he was delusional if he thought either of us wanted anything to do with him. His expression then shifted, that facade slipping to reveal something uglier beneath. He said I was making a mistake, that Sophia and I were just confused, rebounding into each other's arms, that we would soon realize we needed him. I got into my car and locked the doors while he was still speaking, his words muffled through the glass. I drove home with shaking hands and called Sophia from my driveway. She arrived with Thai food and a baseball bat she had purchased that day. We ate pad CEW and formulated a safety plan, as if preparing for war. In a way, I suppose we were. The emails worsened after that, pages and pages of stream of consciousness rambling about divine feminine energy and how we were destined to be a trinity, how he had dreamt about us all living together, sharing everything, how his therapist said he needed closure, but what he truly needed was us. Sophia printed them all out, highlighting the most unhinged sections. We were building a file, just in case. The stack grew thicker every day. He then tried to reach me through work. He appeared at my school during lunch with a story about being my cousin, needing to inform me about a family emergency. The secretary, bless her, didn't fall for it. She had been working there for 20 years and could detect deceit from a mile away. She called me down to confirm. I took one look at him standing there in his ridiculous vintage jacket, holding grocery store flowers wrapped in cellophane, and asked security to escort him out. My principal had to file an official report. The other teachers started asking if I was all right, if I needed anything. I resented that he had made his drama my workplace gossip. Sophia had it worse. He somehow discovered her freelance clients and emailed them all about her unprofessional behavior and mental health crisis. She lost 2 accounts before she could mitigate the damage. She spent an entire night crying on my couch, angry tears about how he was attempting to destroy her life because she wouldn't participate in his sick game. I held her while she trembled with rage and sorrow for the life she had built that he was systematically dismantling. We went to the police station together on a Thursday morning, sitting in uncomfortable plastic chairs that squeaked with every movement, trying to explain the situation to a bored-looking officer who kept asking why we had dated him in the first place if he was so terrible. Sophia's hand found mine under the table, squeezing hard enough to leave marks. We filed for restraining orders, both of us, though the officer warned they were difficult to obtain without proof of physical threats. That night, we made dinner at my place, trying to feel normal. Sophia was quiet, pushing pasta around her plate, the sauce congealing as it cooled. I asked what she was thinking. She said she was scared, but also angry, truly angry that he had already stolen so much from us. Our words, our trust, our sense of safety. She didn't want him to steal this too, whatever this was between us. I walked around the table and kissed her then, not soft or hesitant like our first kiss had been, but something fiercer, more resolute, a declaration and a promise wrapped in one gesture. When we pulled apart, she was crying but smiling, saying she wasn't going to let him ruin this. Neither was I. We decided to go completely public after that, not to spite him, but to stop hiding. We updated our relationship status on social media, posted a photo from the bookstore where we had met to plan his downfall. The caption simply read, "Plot twist." Sophia's sisters immediately called, demanding specifics. My dad sent a text saying he was happy if I was happy, then asked if I was bringing her to Thanksgiving. My stepmom called 5 minutes later, pretending she hadn't heard from Dad, fishing for information. Leo lost his mind. The messages came like a torrent, each one more desperate than the last. How could we do this to him? How could we flaunt it? Didn't we understand we were soulmates? All three of us connected by destiny? He'd forgive us for this betrayal if we just gave him a chance to explain his vision. Sophia blocked the new numbers as quickly as he created them. I started leaving my phone on silent, checking it only when I felt brave enough. A week later, my doorbell rang at 2 o'clock in the morning. I jolted awake, heart pounding as if I had been running. Sophia was spending the night, curled against me like a cat. She woke when I moved, instantly alert with the hypervigilance we had both developed. We crept to the door together, her clutching the baseball bat. I peered through the peephole and saw nothing but darkness, but when I opened the door a crack, the chain still on, there was a box on my doorstep. Inside were printed screenshots of every message Sophia and I had ever exchanged, highlighted sections where we had discussed him, us, the future. Sticky notes with his commentary and his precise handwriting. "See how you needed me to bring you together? This is proof of our connection. You're welcome." At the bottom was a photo of all three of us, poorly photoshopped from separate pictures. We looked like a demented family portrait. Sophia called the police while I took photos of everything with shaking hands. They came and took the box as evidence, stating it would aid with the restraining orders. The officer who responded was younger, took us more seriously, said he had witnessed this kind of escalation before and to be cautious. His partner nodded, adding that these situations could turn dangerous quickly. We didn't sleep the rest of the night, just sat on my couch drinking coffee that grew cold in our hands and discussing what to do. Sophia suggested we stay with her parents for a while, just until things calmed down. I couldn't leave work in the middle of the semester, but we agreed she should go. She packed a bag that morning, kissed me goodbye as if she were going to war. The day she left, I received a call from my landlord. Someone had complained about noise from my apartment, claiming I was operating a business from my home, with too many people coming and going at all hours. All lies, obviously. The landlord knew me, knew it was nonsense, but he had to inform me about the complaint, had to follow up, document everything. I knew exactly who had made it. Sophia called that night from her childhood bedroom, whispering even though her parents were downstairs. Her parents were being wonderful, her dad especially protective, but Leo had already found her there. He sent flowers to her parents' house with a note about missing his future in-laws. Her mom had thrown them directly into the trash and threatened to involve their German Shepherd if he showed up in person. Her dad had added the local police station to his speed dial. I was walking to my car after work the next day when I saw him again. Not approaching, just standing across the parking lot, watching. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows, making him appear spectral. I kept walking, phone already in my hand, ready to dial 911, but he didn't follow. He just stood there like a creepy statue until I drove away, watching in my rearview mirror until he disappeared. That night, I installed my own cameras, borrowing some from the tech teacher at school who didn't ask questions, just handed them over with a knowing look. I pointed them at my door, my car, the walkway to my apartment. Sophia helped me set up the app from her parents' house, both of us pretending this was normal, just a regular Tuesday night activity for a new couple. We tested them by having her watch while I walked around outside, ensuring there were no blind spots. The restraining orders were approved a week later, temporary ones, but it was something. We had to appear in court to make them permanent, present our evidence to a judge. The thought made me sick, but Sophia said we'd do it together, always together. She'd drive back for it, stay with me the night before. Leo was served with the papers on a Monday. I know because the text started again immediately from yet another new number. Just one word, repeatedly, why? Like a broken record, filling my screen with that single syllable. I screenshotted everything and didn't respond. Sophia received the same messages. We were building quite the collection. 2 days later, things went awry in an entirely new way. I was at school, teaching my third period class about metaphors and poetry, when the principal knocked on my door. Her face conveyed something was wrong before she even spoke. She pulled me into the hallway and said there was a situation. Someone had called in a false report about me, claiming I was unstable, shouldn't be around children. They had to follow protocol, put me on administrative leave while they investigated. I knew immediately who had done it. I went home in the middle of the day feeling numb, my students' confused faces haunting me. I called Sophia from my couch, still in my teaching clothes. She was already driving back from her parents' house before I finished explaining, said she'd be there in 3 hours and to double-check all the locks. I heard her car accelerating through the phone while I waited. I called my union representative, explained the situation, the restraining order, the escalating harassment that wouldn't cease. She said she had seen this before, usually with messy divorces, told me to document everything, and that the investigation would clear me, but it might take time I didn't have with bills to pay and a life to live, time that would allow rumors to spread and fester. Sophia arrived with reinforcements, her sister Amy, the one who told Leo to get lost on LinkedIn. Amy was a paralegal, had ideas about civil suits and harassment charges. We spent the evening making plans over Chinese takeout that none of us truly ate, how to fight back legally, how to protect ourselves, how to make him stop without stooping to his level. But Leo wasn't finished. That weekend, while Sophia and I were at the farmer's market, trying to feel normal, buying overpriced tomatoes and pretending everything was fine, he struck again. Sophia's apartment had been broken into. Nothing stolen, but things were moved. Her photos rearranged, her clothes reorganized by color, a book left on her pillow, the same poetry collection that had started everything. Inside, every poem about love was highlighted in yellow. The violation of it made us both sick. The police dusted for fingerprints, but found nothing useful. The lock hadn't been forced, no windows broken. Sophia remembered she had given Leo a spare key months ago, back when she trusted him. She had asked for it back after the engagement party fiasco, but he had claimed he lost it. We had the locks changed that day, then she packed up and moved in with me, officially living together. It wasn't how we had planned it, not 3 months into whatever we were, not because some unstable ex was making our lives hell. But there was something defiant about it too, like we were choosing each other in spite of him, not because of him. Sophia transformed my spare room into an office, setting up her design equipment by the window where the morning light was best. I cleared out half my closet, made space for her in every room. We adopted a routine that felt both new and inevitable. The false report at my job was dismissed after a week of investigation. My principal apologized, said she knew it was harassment related to my personal situation. The other teachers rallied around me, offering support and covering classes. But the damage was done. Parents had heard rumors. I caught suspicious glances at pickup time, whispered conversations that ceased when I walked by. My reputation, carefully built over years, tarnished by his falsehoods. Sophia's work was suffering too. Clients were apprehensive about the drama, even though she had explained the situation. She lost another account, spent hours on the phone doing damage control. We were both losing money, stressed about bills on top of everything else. Leo was destroying our lives in slow motion, and we couldn't make him stop. 3 weeks after the break-in, we received a registered letter, legal-looking, official seal, and everything. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was from Leo's lawyer, claiming we were harassing him, that our restraining orders were based on lies, that we had conspired to humiliate him and ruin his reputation, that he was considering suing for defamation and emotional distress. Sophia laughed when she read it. Not a happy laugh, but something dark and bitter. She said, of course, he had found a way to be the victim in his own narrative. We called Amy immediately. She read through the letter and said it was mostly nonsense, a scare tactic, but we'd need our own lawyer now, just to respond. More money we didn't have for a fight we didn't want. I found Sophia crying in the bathroom that night, truly crying, not the angry tears I had seen before. She said she was exhausted, that she thought leaving him would be the end of it, but it was just the beginning, that she felt foolish for ever loving him, for not seeing what he was. I held her on the bathroom floor and told her she wasn't foolish, that he was skilled at what he did, at making people believe his version of reality, that we'd get through this together. We went to see a lawyer the next day, a friend of Amy's who specialized in harassment cases. She examined our file, all the evidence we had collected, and said we had a strong case for a civil suit, that his letter was actually helpful, proved he was still attempting to control the narrative. We signed papers and wrote another check we couldn't afford. Justice was expensive. Leo must have sensed the walls closing in because his tactics changed. The direct harassment ceased, but strange occurrences continued. Sophia's Instagram was hacked, old photos deleted and replaced with quotes about forgiveness. My Spotify started playing his playlist at random times. Amazon packages we didn't order appeared at my door. Books about polyamory, relationship repair, finding your soulmate, all paid for with untraceable gift cards. We changed every password, enabled two-factor authentication on everything, placed fraud alerts on our credit. It felt like preparing for digital warfare. Sophia darkly joked that we should write a handbook, how to date after your ex turns into a stalker. I said we'd make millions. We laughed because the alternative was screaming. The court date for the permanent restraining orders arrived on a gray Thursday. We dressed carefully, professionally. Sophia wore the suit she had bought for job interviews. I wore my teaching clothes. We looked like responsible adults, not the mess we felt like inside. Amy came for moral support, sitting behind us in the courtroom. Leo appeared looking perfect. New haircut, expensive suit, that charming smile turned up to 11. He brought character witnesses. His mother, who had always loved him blindly. A colleague who testified about his good character. His therapist, who said he was making progress processing his abandonment issues. We presented our evidence methodically. The messages, the vandalism, the hacking, the financial destruction. Cynthia testified about her experience, how the pattern was identical. Our lawyer connected the dots, showed how he had systematically tried to destroy our lives when we wouldn't participate in his game. Leo's lawyer attempted to portray us as vindictive exes, suggested we had started dating to harm his client. The judge, a tired-looking woman who had probably seen worse, didn't buy it. She granted both restraining orders, 5 years, no contact. Leo's face crumpled for just a second before the mask returned. His mother glared at us as if we had murdered her son. We walked out of the courthouse hand in hand, Amy whooping behind us. It felt like winning, but also like the middle of something, not the end. We went for coffee afterward, the three of us crammed into a booth at the place that had become our unofficial headquarters. Sophia was quiet, staring at her latte. I asked what she was thinking. She said she was relieved, but also sad, that this wasn't how she had envisioned her life unfolding, that she had lost herself somewhere in Leo's fantasy and was still finding her way back. I told her I understood, that I felt the same way sometimes, like I was still untangling what was real from what was performance. But this, us, sitting in this coffee shop, planning our next move, this was real. She smiled then, the first genuine smile I had seen all day. Amy raised her coffee cup for a toast, to restraining orders and new beginnings, and women who don't tolerate anyone's nonsense. We clinked our mugs together, laughing at the absurdity of it all. The barista probably thought we were crazy. Maybe we were a little. But Leo wasn't finished, of course he wasn't. The restraining order should have been the end of it, should have been when Leo finally received the message and retreated back under whatever rock he had emerged from. But if I had learned anything about him, it was that he didn't comprehend boundaries, not when we were dating, and definitely not now. 2 weeks after court, Sophia's mom called her, crying. Someone had sent a letter to her workplace, her church, and 3 of her neighbors. The letters claimed Sophia was in an abusive relationship with me, that I was controlling her, had turned her against her family. All signed, a concerned friend. Sophia's mom didn't believe it for a second, but her church friends were asking questions. Her boss pulled her aside to check if everything was okay at home. We knew it was Leo, the writing style, the manipulation, the attempt to isolate Sophia from her support system. But he had been careful. No fingerprints, mailed from different post offices across the city. Nothing that directly violated the restraining order. He was playing a longer game now. Sophia drove home that weekend to mitigate the damage. I wanted to go with her, but she said it would be better if she went alone, didn't want to exacerbate things. I spent the weekend installing more cameras and flinching at every noise, ordered pepper spray online and practiced using it in my backyard until the neighbors started giving me strange looks. She returned Sunday night, exhausted but resolute, said her family was fully on board now, understood what we were dealing with. Her dad had apparently delivered a speech at church about gossip and judgment that made 2 ladies cry. Her mom had printed out information about stalking and harassment to distribute to anyone who asked questions. Small-town solidarity at its finest. Monday morning, I was called into a meeting with my principal and the school board president. Someone had been calling board members, claiming I was unstable, shouldn't be around children. Same song, different verse. They assured me they didn't believe it, but they had to document every complaint. The union representative sat next to me, taking notes while I explained again about Leo, about the restraining order, about the harassment that wouldn't cease. The board president, an older woman named Deborah who had been teaching for 30 years before moving to administration, leaned forward and said she had dealt with a stalker ex-husband back in the 80s, said the only thing that stopped him was when she moved 3 states away and changed her name. Not exactly encouraging, but she promised they'd support me, wouldn't let anonymous complaints affect my job. Sophia was experiencing her own work drama. Someone kept creating fake email accounts with variations of her name, contacting her clients with bizarre messages saying she was closing her business, moving to Peru, joining a cult. Always just believable enough that clients called her, confused. She spent hours doing damage control, explaining the situation repeatedly. We changed her business email, set up filters, but new fake accounts kept appearing like a game of whack-a-mole. 3 weeks after the restraining orders, I was grocery shopping when I saw him. Not Leo, but his friend Marcus from college, the one who had called him disgusting at the engagement party. Marcus saw me and tried to duck down the cereal aisle, but I was faster. I cornered him by the cornflakes and asked what he was doing there. This wasn't even his neighborhood. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight and avoiding eye contact. Finally, he admitted Leo had asked him to check on me, see how I was doing, said Leo was worried about me, thought I was making poor choices. I told Marcus about the restraining order, the harassment, the entire mess. His face went pale. He hadn't known about any of it. Leo had told him we had had a messy breakup, but that was all. Marcus apologized profusely, said he had no idea, promised he wouldn't report back to Leo, would actually tell him to leave us alone. I wanted to believe him, but trust was difficult to come by these days. I finished my shopping, glancing over my shoulder, wondering who else Leo had recruited for his information network. That night, Sophia and I sat down with a bottle of wine and made a list. Every mutual friend, every place we frequented, every possible way Leo could obtain information about us. It was depressingly long. We started making changes. New coffee shop, new grocery store, new gym. It felt like witness protection, except we hadn't done anything wrong. Sophia's sister Amy called the next day with news. She had been doing some investigating through her paralegal networks and found something intriguing. Leo had done this before. Not the exact same situation, but similar. An ex from his college days had filed a police report about harassment that sounded eerily familiar. The case had been dropped when she moved away, but the pattern was evident. We called our lawyer immediately. This could help our civil case, demonstrate a pattern of behavior. She said she'd look into it, see if the other woman would be willing to testify or provide a statement. I felt sick thinking about some other girl going through this years ago, alone, without anyone to compare notes with. A week later, things escalated again. I woke up to find my car tires slashed. All 4, neat cuts that meant I needed complete replacements. The cameras didn't capture anything. Whoever did it knew where the blind spots were. While I was waiting for the tow truck, my neighbor Frank mentioned he had seen my cousin hanging around the night before, describing Leo perfectly. But seeing someone near my car wasn't enough evidence, especially when we couldn't prove it was actually him. Sophia was at a client meeting when it happened. She came home to find me stress baking my 4th batch of cookies and immediately knew something was amiss. I told her about the tires, and she simply pulled me into a hug. We stood there in my flour-covered kitchen, holding each other while the cookies burned. The next morning, we woke up to find Sophia's car keyed. Long scratches down both sides spelling out words I won't repeat. This time, the cameras caught a figure in a hoodie, but the footage was too grainy to prove identity. We filed another police report, added it to our ever-growing file. The officer taking the report looked tired, said these cases were difficult to prosecute without concrete evidence. Sophia broke down in the police station parking lot, said she couldn't endure this anymore, couldn't live like this, always looking over our shoulders, always awaiting the next assault. I held her while she wept, making soothing noises I didn't believe. The truth was, I was scared too. This was escalating, and we couldn't make it stop. We called a meeting with Amy and our lawyer that afternoon, outlining everything that had occurred since the restraining orders. The lawyer said we could file criminal harassment charges, but warned it would be difficult to prove Leo was behind everything. Circumstantial evidence wasn't enough. We needed him on camera, needed direct proof. Amy had a different idea. She had been speaking to the ex from college, the one who had filed the old police report. The woman, Cynthia, was willing to help. She had moved on, was married with kids now, but she remembered the fear, said if she could help prevent him from doing this to someone else, she would. We set up a video call with Cynthia that weekend. She looked normal, happy, like someone who had survived something terrible and emerged on the other side. She recounted her story, and it was like listening to our own experiences in a different key. The love bombing, the plagiarism, the escalation when she tried to leave, the harassment that only ceased when she moved across the country. But here was the interesting part. She had kept everything. Every message, every letter, every piece of evidence from 15 years ago. She said she knew someday it might matter. We spent 3 hours going through it all, building a pattern of behavior that spanned decades. Our lawyer was practically salivating over the evidence. The civil suit paperwork was filed the following Monday. Harassment, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Our lawyer said having Cynthia's evidence made it much stronger. Leo would be served within the week. We braced ourselves for whatever would come next. What came next was silence. Blessed, suspicious silence. No messages, no vandalism, no fake emails for 2 weeks. Nothing. Sophia and I didn't trust it. We kept checking our cameras, looking over our shoulders, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But days passed, and nothing happened. Then Sophia received a call from her mom. Leo had appeared at their house with his mother, attempting to apologize, said he had been going through something, but was better now, wanted to make amends. Sophia's dad had stood in the doorway like a guardian angel and told them to leave before he called the police. Leo's mother had cried, begged them to understand her son was hurting. They left, but it unnerved Sophia's parents. I was grading papers when my phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. It was Leo's mother. She was crying, begging me to drop the lawsuit, said it would ruin his life, his future, that he was a good boy who had made mistakes. I tried to explain about the restraining order, that she shouldn't be contacting me, but she kept talking, said we had driven him to this, that if we had just given him a chance to explain his vision for the 3 of us, none of this would have happened. I hung up and immediately called our lawyer. She said to document everything, but that one phone call from his mother wasn't enough to do anything about. The apple clearly didn't fall far from the tree when it came to respecting boundaries. Sophia came home to find me stress cleaning the bathroom. She took the sponge out of my hand and led me to the couch. We sat there in silence for a while, processing this new development. Finally, she said we needed to be ready for him to escalate again. The lawsuit would push him to new extremes. We were right. 3 days later, I received a call from my dad. Someone had sent him a long email about how I was in a cult, being brainwashed by Sophia, needed intervention. My dad, bless him, had forwarded it to me with just one line. This ex of yours seems unhinged. But other family members weren't as savvy. My aunt called, concerned. My cousin texted, asking if I was okay. Sophia's work email was hacked again. This time, the hacker sent messages to all her clients saying she was closing her business due to mental health issues. She lost 3 more accounts before she could do damage control. We were hemorrhaging money between the lawyer fees and lost work. Leo was attempting to destroy us financially since he couldn't reach us physically. Then came the letters to my school, not complaints this time, but concern about my lifestyle and how it might influence students, carefully worded to sound reasonable while planting seeds of doubt. The principal called me in again, told me to ignore them, but I could see the strain on her face. She was receiving pressure from parents who had received anonymous emails about me. Sophia and I spent a Friday night creating new identities online, not fake ones, just careful ones. Professional emails with no personal information, social media locked down tight. We darkly joked about going off the grid entirely, living in a cabin in the woods where Leo couldn't find us. It didn't seem that funny anymore. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Sophia had a major presentation for a potential client that could compensate for some of the lost income. She had worked on it for weeks, perfecting every detail. I kissed her goodbye that morning and wished her luck. She texted me at noon that it went great. They loved her ideas. Then at 2 o'clock, she called, crying. The client had received an email right after her presentation from her business email address, which had been hacked again. The email was unhinged, discussing spiritual awakening and polyamorous destiny, and how the design work was secondary to spreading a message of love. The client had withdrawn their offer on the spot. Sophia had tried to explain, but the damage was done. I left work early, told my principal I had an emergency. I found Sophia at home, surrounded by printed emails and legal documents, laptop open to her empty bank account. She looked up at me with red eyes and said she couldn't do this anymore, that he was winning, that maybe we should just give up, move away, start over somewhere else. I sat down next to her, and we cried together, for our savings draining away, for our reputations in tatters, for the life we had been trying to build that he kept tearing down. Then I grew angry, truly angry, the kind of anger that burns clean and clarifies everything. I called Amy and our lawyer, said we needed to go on the offensive, No more playing defense while he destroyed our lives piece by piece. The lawyer mentioned we could file for an emergency hearing given the escalation. Push for criminal charges, not just civil. Amy said she had been building a file of our own, had some ideas about Leo's vulnerabilities. Turns out Leo's job didn't know about any of this. He had been careful to keep his professional life separate from his stalking hobby. But Amy had connections, ways of ensuring relevant information reached relevant people, not lies or exaggerations, just documentation of his behavior, the restraining orders, the civil suit, the pattern of harassment. Within a week, Leo was placed on administrative leave from his marketing firm. Suddenly, he was the one dealing with professional consequences. His LinkedIn disappeared overnight. Former colleagues started distancing themselves. One reached out to Sophia to apologize, said they had had no idea what he was capable of. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. We spent the weekend preparing, organizing evidence, practicing testimony. Cynthia flew in to testify in person, said it was worth it to see him face consequences finally. We met her for dinner Saturday night. She was exactly what I had pictured, strong, settled, proof that there was life after Leo. Monday morning, we walked into court armed with boxes of evidence. Leo was there with his lawyer and mother, looking haggard. He had lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes. For a second, I almost felt bad for him. Then I remembered my slashed tires, Sophia's destroyed career, the constant fear we had lived with for months. The hearing was brutal. We presented everything: the messages, the vandalism, the hacking, the financial destruction. Cynthia testified about her experience, how the pattern was identical. Our lawyer connected the dots, showed how he had systematically tried to destroy our lives when we wouldn't participate in his game. Leo's lawyer tried to argue it was all circumstantial, that anyone could have done these things, but the judge wasn't convinced. She had reviewed the evidence over the weekend, saw the clear pattern. She asked Leo directly if he had contacted us since the restraining order. He said no. She asked about his mother's call to me. His face went white. The judge issued a criminal harassment charge on the spot, set bail high enough that his mother's tears couldn't cover it. Leo was let out in handcuffs while his mother wailed about injustice. Sophia grabbed my hand so tightly I thought bones might break. We had done it. We had actually done it. Outside the courthouse, Cynthia hugged us both, said she was proud of us for fighting back, for not letting him win. She gave us her number and said to call if we ever needed to talk to someone who understood. Then she flew back to her normal life, her husband and kids who would never have to know what she had survived. The criminal case would take months to resolve, but the immediate threat was over. Leo was facing real consequences for the first time in his life. His job was gone, his reputation destroyed, his freedom in jeopardy. The civil suit would likely bankrupt him. He had lost everything trying to destroy us. Sophia and I went home to our apartment with its cameras and new locks and pepper spray by the door. We ordered Chinese food and ate it straight from the containers, too exhausted to pretend at normal dinner behavior. She asked if I thought it was truly over. I said I didn't know, but for the first time in months, I could breathe. We started rebuilding slowly. Sophia reached out to old clients, explained the situation now that there were criminal charges to point to. Some returned, others didn't, but new ones appeared too, by word of mouth from people who had heard her story and wanted to support her. My school stood by me, the principal personally addressing rumors at a PDA meeting. 6 months later, Leo pleaded guilty to avoid trial. He received probation, mandatory therapy, and a permanent record that would follow him forever. He had to pay restitution for the damaged cars and lost income. His mother sent one last letter saying we had ruined her son's life. We discarded it, unopened. Sophia and I moved to a new apartment across town. Not running away, just starting fresh. We kept the cameras because trust takes time to rebuild, but we also painted the walls yellow, adopted a cat named Gertrude, and hung art that had nothing to do with poetry or stolen words. One night, we were preparing dinner together, music playing, Gertrude weaving between our legs begging for scraps. Sophia was laughing at something foolish I had said, a flower in her hair from the bread she was making. I looked at her and thought about how we had built this life, not because of Leo, but in spite of him, how we had chosen each other repeatedly through the worst of it. She caught me staring and asked what I was thinking. I told her I loved her. Simple as that. No poetry, no plagiarized words, just truth. She kissed me there in our kitchen, with dinner burning on the stove and the cat meowing for attention. It was perfect in its imperfection, real in a way Leo's fantasies never were. We never heard from him again. Sometimes I check the court records, ensuring he's complying with probation, but mostly we just live. Sophia's business is flourishing. I was promoted to department head. We take cooking classes on Saturdays and have Amy over for dinner once a month. A normal, mundane, beautiful life. Looking back, I can see all the warning signs I missed. The excessive flattery, the appropriation of others' words, the way he collected pieces of people like butterflies pinned to a board. But I can also see how Sophia and I discovered each other in the wreckage, built something authentic from the ashes of his deceptions. So, yes, that's the tale of how I met my girlfriend. Not exactly a charming meet-cute for the ages, but it's ours. Messy, intricate, and true. And unlike Leo's version of events, every word of it is genuine. Sophia suggests we should write a book about it someday. I tell her we've had enough of books and poetry for a lifetime. She laughs and concurs, then proposes a podcast instead. We're still deliberating, but for now, we're simply living one honest day at a time.